Hello lovely painter people, and welcome back to the studio here in Northumberland. Today I'm going to do a painting in acrylics, and what I've done first of all is with a De La Rowney canvas I've just pre-stained the canvas in raw sienna. All I've done, just bash it on, let it dry, and it doesn't matter if it's not smooth and nice like that. It can be rough, brush strokes, everything, as long as you've covered up the white. Just get it pre-stained first. Now that's good and dry, and I'm ready for the sky. There is a book out which is the absolute acrylics for the absolute beginner, and this, according to my publishers, is already a world bestseller. I don't know how I managed that, but there it is. And there's lots of tips and techniques in here, lots of things to be done in acrylics, loads and loads of different projects. Look, that's a spaniel. Lots of different projects in this, and all stage by stage, and it really does help people to get going with acrylics. I'm quite pleased with that one. So in with the sky now. Let's get rid of that. And if you paint in acrylics and you haven't got a stay wet palette, then you're wasting lots and lots of paint, because acrylic dries really quickly in your palette or the plate or whatever you're using, and when you finish you've got to throw it away. That's a waste of paint. Mine is a mess, but as you can tell, everything I use is a mess. Take the lid off and you can see what a mess that is inside there as well. But I have paint in there that's been there for probably a month, and it's still just ready to paint with. I've squeezed a couple in just for this video. I've just topped up my white and my brown, my raw umber. That's it. The rest are just in there, look, ready to paint. And what it is, you've got a film in the bottom which you wet, or a sponge which you wet. It's already in there with the pack, and you put this paper on top, and then you squeeze the paint out. When you finish painting at the end of the day, just put the lid back. All of this stuff is available on my website, as you can imagine, and all at very good prices as well. So what I'm going to do is stick the sky on first. What a lot of people do is do a drawing and then paint really carefully around with the sky, being careful not to miss your drawing, because of course it's acrylics. So if you do a drawing first, you're going to cover up the drawing straight away when you put the sky on. Put the sky on first, let it dry, and then do the drawing on top. You don't have to be carefully painting around stuff then. What I've got here, a little bit of cobalt blue, and the paints I'm using, again, De La Rowney. Everything I use is De La Rowney. System 3 paints, System 3 acrylics, and they're really lovely paints. I love them. Thick and creamy. I've got hardly any water in this. I'm just going to bash that on there first of all. This is just like decorating the lounge. Not that I would know anything about decorating the lounge, but what I mean is big, broad strokes from side to side. Because if you paint it carefully, bit there, you're getting brush marks, look. Trying to fill it all in, you're getting brush marks, big strokes from side to side. Now that's cobalt blue and white mixed. As I'm coming further down the canvas, I'm going to add more white progressively as I go further down. There, see? Very, very simple sky this one. And this scene that I'm doing is literally over the field from the back of my house here in Northumberland. More white, a little bit more blue again, I think. And I'm coming about 2/3 the way down this canvas. Here and there, the whole idea of a pre-stain is that when you go thinly on the canvas with the paint, you've got an overall colour shining through. It's giving you light from the back, if you like. A bit more white. I'm humming to myself. Just be careful with that. And now, actually a little bit more there. Yeah, now what I'm doing, That blue and white mix I've got on the go there, I'm adding a tiny touch of Payne's grey to it. There. It's a very light grey. A bit more blue. Down here. This brush that I'm using, by the way, you can buy System 3 brushes. There's a whole range of stuff in System 3 paints. Dale Rowley System 3. And it's all lovely stuff. But today, just because I had them here, I'm using my Acrylic watercolour brushes. Same brushes I use with my watercolours. 3/4 inch flat, 1.5 inch flat, number 8 round, and a number 4 rigger. Just the same brushes that I use with my watercolours. But they're good sturdy brushes, they'll take a lot of abuse. That. Just moving paint around a little bit now. Bit down there as well. Now I'm going to wash my brush out, squeeze it out between my fingers, and just with titanium white, put some on there. And a little bit down here. Looks a bit of a mess at the minute. I will resolve that shortly. Bit down there. Now, finish with the brush. What I'm going to do now is with my finger, simply roll, create the cloud. I was thinking recently, I was doing a show with quite a big audience, and this guy piped up and he said, which finger are you using? And I just turned to the audience and said, that finger. But I really was. So simple, but quite an effective little sky that. Just don't mess about. Now I'll let that dry for a couple of minutes, then put my drawing on top. Now, that's all good and solid dry. Acrylics does dry quite fairly quickly actually. So what I've got here is my far distance line there. That will just be a swathe of colour in the far distance. No detail. And here we'll have a clump of middle distance trees there. This painting I'm going to make kind of like this time of year, beginning of spring, so there's no loads of greenery. Bit there, with a load of trees and stuff there. The pencil I'm using, again, it's an IKEA pencil. I'm a tight-fisted Yorkshireman. Don't believe in spending money on unnecessary things. Now here, this is like a field line, a load of grass. Sorry, for those of you who live in Sloane Square, grass. Coming out there. And some more bits and pieces here. All I'm doing really is reminding myself line between fields, various bits of fields. Now, about in the centre there really, centre of the canvas. It's a tree. A gnarled old tree. As I said, I'm not going to have loads of foliage on this, but I will give the impression of lots of twigs, without painting lots of twigs. There's another one, a little bit nearer, so a little bit taller. And I shall invent a load of twigs with my rigger brush later on, so don't get bogged down with too many pencil lines. Here's another one, a lot nearer, so quite a bit bigger. and I have another one here. Lots of people say, oh, I can't paint because I can't draw a straight line. There are no straight lines here. In fact, I'm deliberately wiggling my hand around a little bit. I am doing that, by the way. That's not red wine. Not yet, anyway. Coming up here. And we'll be having some twigs coming off this lot as well. But basically, that's my drawing done. Now it's on with the paint. And I keep talking about the System 3. It is really good paint and it's really inexpensive. And the thing about acrylics is, I think it's probably about the most forgiving medium there is. You can paint it almost like watercolours, really thinly on your watercolour paper, or you can paint it good and thick like oils on a canvas like I'm doing today. But as I said, the System 3 is just so forgiving. This is the paint I'm using, look. System 3. I'll just try and get rid of that for a second. There, I've got a few colours here in my pocket. System 3 acrylics. That's your burnt sienna, raw umber, all of which I'll be using today. Cobalt blue. And there's quite a few others as well. I'll be using about 6 colours in this painting. But I think these are about £2.75 or something on my website. And they're quite big tubes, last you for quite a while. Now, in with the painting. I'm starting off in that far distance. I've just stuck my finger in it. Starting off in the far distance with a little bit of ultramarine blue, Payne's grey, and a tiny touch of my red. All of these colours are listed on the website. And to start with, I want a bit of water into that, so it's not as thick as it's going to be. And I'm just going over there in the far distance. Look. This is my number 8 round brush, which will carry a lot of paint. And down here. And because we've got a pre-stain on, you can leave little bits of it showing through here and there. Across there. I know where my trees are, so I don't need to go around them too much. A little bit of that. Now, touch more water into the brush. And just soften down here and there. And that's my distance in. I don't want detail on it. It is just far distance. But there's a bit of a blue tinge to it as well. Cobalt blue, Payne's grey, with a tiny touch of my crimson. Now, for this lot here, middle distance, I've got a little bit of raw umber, and again, a touch of my red, and a touch of burnt sienna. A little bit less water in than I used over here, and now I'm just dropping those in now. This time I will go around my trees because they're easy enough to miss there. A few bits, and with the round brush I'm just tapping on them. A little bit more. And bring that down. Just tapping. Get a bit of a rough edge to the top. Now, a little bit of just blue and Payne's grey into that lot. That's my cobalt blue. Don't mix your blues, don't change your blues. A bit of that, a little bit of Payne's grey. And we'll have some down the bottom there. A little bit there. Coming up slightly. Now, just with my finger again, look, tap it on. smooth it in a little bit. I'm not rubbing, I'm just dabbing. Squash some lumps and sharpen it up a little bit on the bottom. Sharpen your bottom. Didn't like that bit. And a bit more here. It's said that Turner had the dirtiest fingernails in history. That's because he was always in his paint. Not that I class myself with Turner, obviously. Now, a little bit of Hooker's Green. God, he uses Hooker's Green in acrylics as well. I use it in everything, but never use it by itself. I've got Hooker's Green and raw umber mixed here. A little bit of water into it. Bring that across. I'm keeping that a little bit darker, strange as it may seem, in the middle distance, and I'm going to get lighter in this big field here, in the foreground. Try and capture some light in the painting. Because what makes a painting, what makes the light, in a painting, is the amount of dark you put in. Contrast. Light against dark. I'm going to have a little bit of that here as well. And again, don't worry about any canvas that you're leaving showing through, because that's your raw sienna. Now, I've got a little bit of Naples yellow. And some of that here. There. Now, tiny touch of burnt sienna. Just warm it up slightly with a bit of burnt sienna. Got plenty of water into that burnt sienna this time. Now over to, just smooth that out a bit, over to the middle, the far distance over there really. Hooker's Green and burnt sienna this time. With Hooker's Green, if you take Hooker's Green out of the, I use 9 colours in acrylics, take Hooker's Green out of the equation of the 9 and mix the other 8 in, one at a time. Got 8 different lovely greens. Mix the third colour into some of the mixes, and I've got a few secondary greens as well. I've got quite a lot of greens from one tube. But like I said, never use it by itself. That's Hooker's Green and burnt sienna there, coming across in the middle distance. A little bit there. Leave gaps between them. A taller one there, actually. There. And hold a couple of bits over there. Now on top of that, like I say, I don't want this midsummer or anything, so I'm going to drop a little bit of raw sienna on top of those. Actually, and a bit of burnt sienna. And just a few bits here and there. Let's leaving a little bit of the green shine through as well. And that warms up slightly as well. Do I want some Naples yellow? Yes, I think I do. Naples yellow. A few touches here. Yeah. If I didn't like it, you see, I could take it out afterwards. Just wet my brush again and pick up the paint, move it. And with acrylics, if the whole thing goes wrong, paint the whole canvas white, let it dry, start off with a clean canvas again. Wash out, squeeze out, soften those bits with the tip of my damp brush. There. Next to do is to start on the big trees. Now, I'm going to start off with the big trees, with the smallest of the big trees first, back here, and come further forward. And I'm using my rigger brush to start with, number 4 rigger. As I said, this is Aquafine, so it's a watercolour rigger brush, but as you can see, well used with acrylics as well. Now, I'm starting off with a little bit of raw umber, mixed with a bit of titanium white, there, like so. And a rigger brush, we'll just start off with the tree trunk coming in here. Now, as I come further up, lift the brush off slightly so that I'm getting thinner strokes, like so. A few bits here. And I'm going to put the raw umber, excuse me, I'm going to put the raw umber everywhere I need it on all of the trees before I go in with light colours and dark colours, of course. A few bits here. And the same in here. Press the rigger brush on for a thicker stroke, look like so. Let the brush spread a little bit. And a few bits coming up here. Now, coming further forward, have you noticed, by the way, this is still the same dip of paint. That's how much paint these brushes will hold. They carry a big wash. They're lovely brushes. And I think that brush is about £2.50 or something. Ridiculously cheap. And now it's starting to run out a little bit, so I'll have another dip. And a few bits here. Coming down, broader stroke again, press on harder. I said all of the trees, I'm going to leave that one out for the time being. The big, nearest, most detailed one. A bit more of that on there. And a few bits up here. Now, I'm going in with some dark. A little bit of Payne's Grey. I'll start off here, and I'm putting the Payne's Grey to the right hand side to start with. A few bits coming down. Oops, that's a thick bit. Instantly, when you start and get some dark on, the things come to life a little bit more. So. And some down here. I've just noticed my tongue sticking out. Now, a little bit of Naples yellow. And guess where that's going? If the dark went to the right hand side, this is going to the left hand side. And again, instantly, when you get your light against the dark, it lifts the whole thing. Naples yellow is a lovely colour. But just be careful with it, because it is strong. Good time to film this, because we're in the middle of the coronavirus lockdown, and it's very, very quiet outside. It's quiet here anyway in Northumberland, but there isn't a car on the roads out the back. Now, a few touches of white, just here and there. And can you see now why I made that lot behind here dark? Because that dark pushes these further forward. If you get a bit that you don't like, just tap it with your finger, like I just did there. I'll leave those for a second. In the meantime, back to this big one. Starting off again with the raw umber, this time a little bit less white into it. Raw umber and white, but less white. Filling that in there. Wiggly a little bit. And bring that up. And this one is a good deal taller than the others, for obvious reasons. It's nearer. Hence, the colour's got stronger as well in the tree. And as I said when I was doing the drawing, starting to invent some twigs now with your brush as well. You don't need to stick to every pencil line. And a few bits coming out here. Now, back in with the paint spray, down that right hand side. And don't make it a straight line down the right hand side. Start and spread it into the trunk a little bit. Look. Bit there. Now we'll invent a few more twigs with the paint spray. Coming out of here. Just let the rigger brush dance around on the canvas. Quite a few of these twigs aren't even joined to a tree. Now, Naples yellow. I'm just thinking, when I'm doing this, I might have some ivy going up this tree as well. There. Bit of ivy. I should change to my number 8 round brush again. And what I'm doing is I'm getting my hooker's green and raw sienna, quite a lot of raw sienna into that. But this time what I'm doing is with the round brush, I'm going to split the brush. Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt it. I've split it and stipple on a little bit, look, like so. Just a hint of green. Now I'll have a little bit of paint spray again. Again with the brush split. Bit of that there. Now, a little bit of Naples yellow again. You don't want the ivy to take over, it's just a hint of various greens and lights and darks in that area. A little bit there, look. Now, not so much foliage, but kind of like the canopy of a tree with twigs. So what I'm going to do to start with, I'll have a little bit of raw sienna and burnt sienna mixed, which makes half-baked sienna. It doesn't really. Raw sienna and burnt sienna mixed. And I've got a fairly dry brush here, just get rid of surplus paint. All I'm going to do is pick up the surface of the canvas, look. And drag it down. Bring that back here as well. There, see how effective that is, without fiddling about and drawing loads of twigs. Or should I say painting loads of twigs. Now I'm going to have a little bit of Payne's grey and blue mixed. Don't want much of this. More of that. There. Now, finally, a touch of Naples yellow. Still with the side of that brush. Give it that. And again, with my finger. Now, time for big bits in the foreground. Now it's into the big foreground bits, and for all of this I'm going to use my 3/4 inch flat wash brush. Again, it's an aquafine brush, not that you can really see with the handle because it's caked in acrylics, but this for watercolour really, but also fabulous for acrylics because they'll hold so much water. I'm starting off with raw sienna and white. By the way, the white I'm using is titanium white. There's lots of different whites. It's far less confusing just to stick with white because titanium white is a good mixing white, but also it's a good standalone white. So far less confusing. Stick with one. I'm starting off here in the foreground, big broad strokes. Like so. And again, as you can tell there, I've left a little bit of my understain showing through. Switch further forward here. And again, little bits of the understain showing through. That's a bit down here. Whilst that is still wet, so I've just put it on. It's not soaking wet obviously because I haven't got too much water in it. But now I want a little bit of raw umber. Just a few strokes here and there. Down here. Notice those lines that I put in, even though they're wiggly and very haphazardly put in, they're kind of like getting thinner as they're going back further into the distance. That's helping take the eye into the picture a little bit. Now, a little bit of blue and Payne's grey, cobalt blue of course. Touches in there as well. Now, just with a clean damp brush, washing out, squeezing out, soften those a little bit. I'm just going to let that settle for a few minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to go to the grass here. Wash out, squeeze out, and just with a clean damp brush, I'm going to start off with Hooker's Green and raw sienna. Plenty of raw sienna into that. Don't want much water into it, and that's going underneath here. Actually a touch more green. That's better. Yeah, that's better. Now flick up a little bit, look. Push the brush in, flick it up. Bring that down to the field. I'm not dipping in again, so the paint gets weaker as it runs off the brush. Take that back to there. And again, flick up. I almost keep turning around and saying, any questions? Because that's what I'm doing when I'm in shows all the time. I stand on stage and I talk and paint, just like I'm doing here. But of course, I keep turning around and saying, any questions? And there's always questions. In fact, one day I was doing a show in Dublin, and I turned and said to the audience, probably about 300 of them, any questions? And this guy piped up, he said, where do you get your hair done? Now, a little bit of, that was hooker's green and raw sienna. Now I've got hooker's green and burnt sienna, so it's a darker green. Bit of that there, and burnt sienna in. A few flicks, look. There, a bit more paint. Now I've just got that little bit of light showing there. In a minute I shall go back to that once that's dried slightly. In the meantime, back to that bit. And the green and raw sienna. A few touches of that here and there. Taking that out to the base of there. And I'll let that dry for a few minutes now before final shadows, which make a big difference. Now, before I add the final shadows, I'm going to add a few little bits of light as well. We'll have some shadow there. There's some light there. Bit of Naples yellow, just with the tip of my 3/4 inch flat brush. I'm just going on with the side of the brush really. Like so. Just lighting up this foreground bit here. A few bits there. But I don't want to go mad with that. And a little bit of that over there as well, just to light that up slightly. Also, I'm going to have a little bit of that there, on that top edge. Just a little bit of light there. Now, before I put the final shadows on, I'm just going to stick a few birds, just with a little bit of paint spray. My rigger brush. Just make sure my hand's clean so I'm not putting it on top of the canvas with muggy hands. I'm just going to have a few ticks. Coming in from over there. Now, you don't have to have just shadow from something like a tree casting shadow. You can also have cloud shadow. I'm going to pop a bit of cloud shadow in the middle distance here, and then the shadow from my trees as well. Quite brave, this. Bit of paint spray. Bit of deep violet, or as I call it, violent violet. Deep violet's a lovely colour, but it's very strong and very, as it suggests, deep in colour. So you don't want it too strong. Plenty of water on there, and I'm going to have a bit of shadow there. Look. Going up and across. A little bit from the trees there. And again, touch more there. Just with the corner of that big brush. Now wash out, squeeze out and soften those slightly with a clean damp brush. And there we go, a very simple little picture. Now, like I said, all of the things that I've used here, the 4 brushes, the few colours, I think it's 9 in total that I used, but I've used very few on that one. I think there's probably 5 colours in that one. But in total for everything I use 9. 4 brushes, canvas, stay wet palettes, it's all there on my website. So have a look. It's all very inexpensive, and of course the book, here it is, Acrylics for the Absolute Beginner. And if you're painting in acrylics, like your Stay Wet palette, that's a bit of a must really, because it teaches you from scratch with some very, very simple subjects through to some quite complex subjects. So hopefully you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.